Dearest listeners, before we explore a promise made in grief and the gentle heart that dared to challenge it, allow this author a small indulgence. If these chronicles of the heart bring you some measure of delight, I should be most grateful if you would grant me a token of your favor with a like. Do subscribe so that you never miss a dispatch from my desk, and pray, leave a comment below. I am endlessly curious to know from which city or county you receive my whispers. Now, with such matters attended to, let us begin. There are promises we make in the depths of grief that the heart was never meant to keep. Today, this author brings you the most poignant tale of a vow spoken over a deathbed and the gentle soul who dared to challenge it. But let us not rush, for the best scandals, like the finest wine, must be savored properly. One must confess, when this author first encountered Lord Alexander Pembroke at Lady Ashford's soirée 3 winters past, one could not help but notice how determinedly he had fashioned himself into a monument to mourning. At merely 30 years of age, the man wore his widowerhood like armor, each perfectly proper gesture a shield against the world's attempts at consolation. But grief, gentle listeners, makes for cold company, particularly for 2 motherless girls who deserved more than a father, who moved through life as though he were already entombed alongside their departed mother. Little Lady Emma, aged 7, and sweet Lady Rose, barely 5, existed in that peculiar purgatory reserved for children of the ton whose remaining parent had decided that love itself had died with their spouse. This author has it on good authority that Lord Pembroke had made a most sacred vow to his wife, Lady Catherine, as she lay dying of consumption 2 years prior. With her pale hand clutched in his, he had sworn never to love another, never to let another woman take her place in his heart or home. A romantic gesture, one supposes, though this author cannot help but observe that the dead make rather selfish companions, demanding loyalty while offering nothing but memories in return. The magnificent Pembroke House in Grosvenor Square stood as a testament to this promise. Once filled with laughter and light, it had become a mausoleum of perfectly preserved rooms where joy was as unwelcome as dust on the mahogany. The servants whispered, and servants do so love to whisper, that his lordship visited his late wife's chambers each evening, speaking to her portrait as though she might answer. It was on a particularly dreary April morning when Miss Sophia Hartwell arrived at Pembroke House, bonnet slightly askew from the wind and spirits undampened despite the rain. This author happened to be taking tea with Lady Worthington across the square and witnessed the entire arrival. Would you believe, dearest listeners, that the young woman actually paused to admire the rain-soaked roses in the front garden before approaching the door? Miss Hartwell, as your humble chronicler soon discovered, was that rarest of creatures in our cynical age, a genuine optimist. At 23, she had already weathered the death of both parents and the loss of her modest fortune to a father's gambling debts. Yet rather than allowing these trials to embitter her, she seemed to have emerged with an almost militant determination to find beauty in the world. The interview one hears was conducted by the housekeeper, Mrs. Pemberton, as his lordship could not be bothered with such domestic matters. The previous 3 governesses had lasted a combined total of 4 months, driven away by the children's desperate unhappiness and their father's arctic indifference. But Miss Hartwell, with her warm brown eyes and ready smile, possessed something those other women had lacked, an absolute refusal to be discouraged. This author finds it rather amusing that Lord Pembroke believed he could simply install another governess like replacing a worn carpet. The man had not reckoned with Miss Sophia Hartwell's particular brand of gentle insurgency. One must paint the scene for you, gentle listeners, of those first weeks. Miss Hartwell arrived each morning like spring insisting upon winter's retreat. Where previous governesses had maintained proper distance, she gathered the girls into warm embraces. Where others had enforced silent meals in the nursery, she filled their hours with stories and laughter. But here is where our tale takes its first intriguing turn. You see, Miss Hartwell possessed a most peculiar habit. She spoke to the girls constantly of their mother, but not with the hushed reverence his lordship preferred. No, she spoke of Lady Catherine as though she were simply away on a long journey, her love still present in every corner of the house. "Your mamma loved roses, did she not?" Miss Hartwell would say, leading the girls to the abandoned garden. "Then we must tend them for her. She would want to see them blooming." This author has it on good authority that Lord Pembroke first truly noticed his daughter's new governess on a Tuesday afternoon in May. He had returned early from his club, itself an unusual occurrence, and heard something that had been absent from Pembroke House for 2 long years. The sound of his daughters laughing. Following the sound to the music room, he discovered Miss Hartwell at the pianoforte, teaching the girls a silly song about dancing mice. Lady Emma was giggling helplessly while little Rose attempted to perform the accompanying dance. But what struck his lordship, what made him pause unseen in the doorway, was the expression on his daughters' faces. They were happy. Well, well. It seems our brooding lord was not quite as impervious as he believed himself to be. But worry not, gentle listeners. Recognition of feeling and acceptance of it are 2 very different battles. Oh, dearest listeners, if only you could have witnessed the internal warfare that commenced within Lord Pembroke's carefully fortified heart. This author had the pleasure of observing him at several social functions that season, and one can report with certainty that the man was suffering from a most inconvenient awakening. It began, as these things often do, with small observations, the way Miss Hartwell's hair caught the afternoon light in the garden, the patience with which she answered Rose's endless questions, the gentle melody of her laugh when Emma mastered a particularly difficult French conjugation. Each observation was immediately followed by his lordship's stern internal reminder of his sacred vow. The ton began to notice changes too. Lord Pembroke, who had perfected the art of arriving at social functions precisely late enough to avoid dancing, was spotted actually conversing at the Ashford Musicale. When asked about his daughters, a topic he previously dismissed with curt efficiency, he found himself speaking of their progress with something approaching, dare one say it, pride? This author finds it rather entertaining that a man who prided himself on iron control could be so thoroughly undone by a governess who insisted upon wearing yellow on rainy days and who taught his daughters to press flowers in the pages of poetry books. But the heart, gentle listeners, has ever been democracy's greatest champion, caring nothing for the edicts of stubborn lords. The first true crack in his lordship's defenses came during the Midsummer's Eve gathering at Pembroke House, a tradition Miss Hartwell had somehow convinced him to revive. As this author can personally attest, having secured an invitation through dear Lady Worthington, the evening was magical in ways Lord Pembroke had not anticipated. Miss Hartwell had transformed the ballroom with roses and candlelight, creating an enchanted garden within doors. But it was not the decorations that caught his lordship's attention. No, it was the sight of his daughters, dressed in their finest gowns, presenting a musical performance they had prepared. As they played, Emma on the pianoforte and Rose singing in her sweet, clear voice, this author observed Lord Pembroke's face undergo a most remarkable transformation. Gone was the marble mask of perpetual mourning. In its place was something raw and vulnerable, a father seeing his children not as reminders of loss, but as gifts to be cherished. And standing beside them, beaming with pride, was Miss Hartwell, whose gentle persistence had orchestrated this miracle. One must confess, even this author required her fan at the moment when his lordship's eyes met those of the governess. The look that passed between them, gratitude mixing with something far more dangerous, would have scandalized the ton had they been paying attention. Fortunately, all eyes were on the children. What Lord Pembroke did not know, but this author did, was that Miss Hartwell was fighting her own battle. You see, gentle listeners, our dear governess had committed the cardinal sin of her profession. She had fallen desperately in love with her employer. But Miss Sophia Hartwell was nothing if not practical. She knew her place in the world, understood the insurmountable gulf between a penniless governess and a peer of the realm. More importantly, she knew of his vow to his late wife, having heard the servants' whispers and seen the shrine-like preservation of Lady Catherine's chambers. So she loved in silence, pouring her affection into his daughters, telling herself it was enough to see them bloom. She filled their days with joy and learning, restored laughter to the nursery, and carefully, so carefully, avoided being alone with their father. This author observed with great interest how our dear couple began an elaborate dance of avoidance. Lord Pembroke, suddenly finding urgent business whenever Miss Hartwell entered a room. Miss Hartwell developing a fascinating ability to predict his lordship's movements and adjust her schedule accordingly. Two souls desperately fighting an attraction that grew stronger with each passing day. The children, those innocent conspirators, made avoidance increasingly difficult. "Papa," Lady Emma would say, "Miss Hartwell says you used to sing with Mama. Will you sing with us?" Or little Rose, tugging at his coat, "Miss Sophie is teaching us about stars. She says Mama is watching from the brightest one. Will you come see?" Each interaction was torture of the sweetest kind. The accidental brush of hands when reaching for the same book. The moment their eyes met over the children's heads during evening prayers. The way she smiled, not the bright, cheerful smile she wore like armor, but the soft, unguarded one that appeared when she thought no one was watching. The crisis, when it came, arrived on a rain-soaked Thursday in September. This author had it from Mrs. Pemberton herself, who witnessed the entire dramatic scene. Lord Pembroke had returned home early from Parliament to find the house in uproar. Little Rose had taken fever, and Miss Hartwell had not left her side for 2 days and nights. His lordship found them in the nursery, Rose sleeping fitfully, while Miss Hartwell sang softly, cooling the child's forehead with damp cloths. The governess was exhausted, her usually neat appearance disheveled, yet she continued her vigil with unwavering devotion. "You should rest," his lordship said, his voice rough with emotion. "I will sit with her." But Miss Hartwell shook her head, never pausing in her ministrations. "I promised her I would stay until the fever breaks. A promise to a child is sacred, my lord." Something in those words, perhaps the echo of his own sacred promise, shattered his lordship's careful control. "And what of promises made in grief?" he demanded. "What of vows that condemn the living to walk among the dead?" Gentle listeners, steel yourselves for what followed. Miss Hartwell raised her eyes to his, and in them was such understanding, such compassion, that Lord Pembroke felt exposed as never before. "Some promises," she said softly. "Honor the dead by killing the living. Your wife loved you, my lord. Would she want her memory to be a prison?" The fever broke that night, and with it, something broke in Lord Pembroke as well. This author heard from the staff that he retreated to his study and did not emerge until dawn, and when he did, he went directly to his late wife's chambers, not to commune with her portrait, but to pack away the shrine he had created. But revelation and resolution, dearest listeners, are not always comfortable bedfellows. Lord Pembroke, having acknowledged his feelings, now faced a terrible dilemma. He loved Miss Hartwell, loved her with a force that terrified him. Yet how could he offer his heart when he had sworn it would remain forever buried? Miss Hartwell, for her part, began making discreet inquiries about other positions. Though she presented a brave face to the children, this author has it on good authority that the letter of inquiry to her old schoolmistress was penned late one night, its ink smudged by a single, silent tear that fell upon the page. A small, private grief for a future she dared not hope for. This author's network of below-stairs intelligence soon reported that she had received an excellent offer from Lady Fairfax in Yorkshire. When questioned by a distraught Emma, she simply said that sometimes, when we love people, the kindest thing is to set them free. The children, those blessed innocents, were having none of it. Lady Emma, displaying a strategic mind that would serve her well in future seasons, orchestrated a campaign that would have impressed Wellington himself. She began leaving her mother's journals where her father would find them, always open to passages where Lady Catherine wrote of her hopes for her family's future happiness. But it was little Rose who delivered the coup de grace. One evening at dinner, for Miss Hartwell now joined them at his lordship's insistence, she announced, "I talked to Mama in my dreams. She says Papa is being very silly." The silence that followed this pronouncement was deafening. Lord Pembroke's face went white, then red. Miss Hartwell studied her plate as though it contained the secrets of the universe. Finally, Emma, with the gravity of her 7 years, added, "She's right, Papa. Mama always said love makes everything grow, like roses." This author has rarely witnessed a man age a decade in a single moment, but Lord Pembroke managed it. He excused himself abruptly, leaving behind 2 determined daughters and 1 mortified governess. He did not retreat to his bedchambers. Instead, this author learned. He went to his study, the very heart of his fortress of grief. He stood before the large portrait of his late wife, Catherine, the candlelight flickering across her serene face. But for the first time in 2 years, he was not speaking to her. He was wrestling with her memory. A promise, he thought, a sacred vow made in the fog of sorrow. But was that vow meant to be a cage? Was his loyalty to her memory to be paid for with the living, breathing happiness of his own children? He looked at the gentle smile his Catherine wore in the portrait and asked a silent, desperate question. "What would you have me do?" The painted eyes offered no answer, but in the profound silence of the house, a house now filled with the echoes of laughter, he began to feel the first, terrifying stirrings of his own. What followed, gentle listeners, was a week of the most delicious tension Pembroke House had ever witnessed. Lord Pembroke threw himself into estate business with manic energy. Miss Hartwell continued her duties with professional dedication, her resignation letter hidden but ready. The children watched both adults with the calculating eyes of born matchmakers. It was Mrs. Pemberton who finally took matters into her capable hands. This author applauds her initiative, for sometimes even the most stubborn of lovers require a firm push. She conspired with the children to arrange what she called an intervention of the heart. On a glorious October morning, Lord Pembroke was summoned urgently to the rose garden by his daughters. There he found a scene that would have melted even this author's cynical heart. Miss Hartwell stood among the blooms, surrounded by pink roses that the girls had gathered. Pink, the color of new love, of fresh beginnings, of hope after sorrow. "Papa," Emma said solemnly, "we have something important to say." Rose nodded vigorously. "Miss Sophie is leaving, and that's not acceptable." "We've decided," Emma continued, with the imperious certainty of her class, "that she should stay forever as our mama." The look on Miss Hartwell's face, shock mixing with hope, mixing with terror, was matched only by his lordship's expression. But then something remarkable happened. Lord Pembroke smiled. Not the careful, controlled expression he had worn like a mask for 2 years, but a genuine smile that transformed his face. "Miss Hartwell," he said, moving toward her with purpose, "my daughters are correct. It is entirely unacceptable for you to leave." He paused, then added with devastating honesty, "I find myself in the curious position of needing to break one promise to keep another." "My lord," she whispered, trembling like the rose petals in the morning breeze. "I promised Catherine I would never love again," he said, taking her hands as his daughters watched with barely contained glee. "But I also promised her I would ensure our daughter's happiness. They will never be happy without you, and neither, I find, will I." Oh, dearest listeners, if only you could have witnessed the joy that bloomed on Miss Hartwell's face. This author nearly required her smelling salts when his lordship continued, "I have been dead these 2 years, Sophia. You brought me back to life. You brought us all back to life. Will you have us? Not as governess, but as wife and mother?" The kiss that followed, witnessed by 2 delighted girls and 1 deeply satisfied housekeeper hiding behind the garden gate, was everything a first kiss should be. tender, passionate, and full of promise. The wedding, gentle listeners, was a triumph of love over propriety. "Oh," the Tun whispered naturally, "a governess marrying her employer? The scandal." But when they saw Lord Pembroke's face as he watched his bride walk down the aisle, when they witnessed his daughters serving as the most enthusiastic bridesmaids in memory, even the highest sticklers found their objections melting away. This author attended, of course, and can report that the bride wore Lady Catherine's wedding pearls, a gesture suggested by the children and blessed, one suspects, by the angel watching from above. The church was filled with pink roses, and little Rose loudly informed everyone that her dream mama was very pleased indeed. But the true miracle, dearest listeners, was not the wedding, but what followed. Pembroke House bloomed again, filled with laughter and light and the chaos of a growing family. For yes, in due course the nursery welcomed new occupants, twin boys who would never know a father frozen in grief or a house shrouded in sorrow. This author encountered the family recently in Hyde Park, and one must confess to a most unfamiliar warmth in the region of one's heart. Lord Pembroke pushed a perambulator while his wife held Rose's hand. Emma ran ahead with the twins toddling after her. They were gloriously, chaotically, perfectly happy. As they passed, this author heard little Rose say, "Papa, do you still talk to First Mama?" "Every day," he replied, catching his wife's eye with infinite tenderness. "I thank her for sending us your second mama." And now, what are your thoughts on this matter of the heart? Did this story of a promise broken to heal a family find favor with you? Your likes are a most welcome form of applause, and I am always eager to read your reflections in the comments below. To ensure you are witness to my next chronicle, do subscribe and engage that most curious bell icon, a modern marvel for the timely delivery of secrets. Until then, remember, the greatest scandals often lead to the greatest happiness. Your devoted chronicler, Lady Ravenswood.